And we're live. So I think we're starting off.
Yeah, give advice.
Yeah, give advice. So my best piece of advice, it's a good tie-in with Pink Goldfish, is that you can't be half pregnant in life, right? You got to go all in. You can't be half pregnant.
That's terrible advice, so I'll give you helpful. I was in college, and my resident director asked me if I was going to be a resident assistant the next year, and I said no, because I'm the reason you have resident assistants. And he said that he saw all of my seemingly negative qualities as leader in me, or a lot of himself in me, sort of fix who I was, that my weaknesses might be strengths, and that really changed my life. This idea that maybe things that some people see as negatives, as weaknesses, as shortcomings are actually your strengths or your best qualities. And so that's why I say that what makes us strong. So that's the best advice I ever got, and that's the advice then that I basically give to.
Awesome. Awesome. And for those watching at home, that first advice was from the one and only Stan Phelps. That other advice was from David Rendell. So Stan is half pregnant today, and Dave is still incredibly weird and pink. So I'm grateful for that. So
yes,
welcome to the show, guys. Stan, you don't look half pregnant. I'm glad for that. And Dave, congratulations on riding in a pink van with Stan. You're crazy.
Okay. Yeah.
Yes. So cool. Well, so first you got to tell me, where the hell are you guys that your internet is spotty and that you're able to connect with me while you're on the road on the Pink Goldfish tour?
We just left Great Falls, Montana this morning, and we're on our way down to Yellowstone, and we are driving through, we just passed through the Lewis and Clark National Forest, and
we're in Neihard. We're in Neihard.
Neihard, Montana. T.
Kind of like Bob Newhart, but with an I instead of a W.
And the inconvenience store.
We love it because we're at a place called an inconvenience store.
That's the
How brilliant
perfect
is
place.
that?
Yeah, right? That's the perfect place to jump here and talk about your book, guys, because I think your book is the opposite of what most people would say. I was reading, you actually picked the least popular cover for your book. Why would you do that?
So we had a contest. We came up with 3 different versions, and what was interesting is not only was this one disliked the most, what happened? People went out of their way, Phil, to tell us the reasons why we shouldn't use that cover.
We put one of the reviews on the cover. Hideous, garish. I would not buy this book solely based on the cover. So just practicing what we preach,
right.
Practicing what we preach. The goal isn't to have a perfect cover. The goal isn't to have a cover everyone likes. The goal is to have a cover that we like, and to maybe antagonize people, but to have people pick up the book because they're like, oh my gosh, that's terrible. What's going on there? But here's the real reason. If it was a good cover, by most people's definition, in order to have a weird cover, you
Yeah, you guys are weird, man. So I love that, right? You got to polarize people. You got to upset them a little bit. You got to get them to say, maybe that's not for me, or maybe, hell yeah, that's for me, right? So I dig that, guys. That's really cool. So I have to say, I know you two both live in North Carolina, but I would not expect the two of you to partner up. You couldn't be much different from each other. So how did this happen? How did this love affair happen where you'd write books?
Stan was failing in his career and needed someone successful to lift him up and bring him into the world of effectiveness and success in speaking and writing. And so he said naturally he'd find the most successful speaker that he could find. And unfortunately he couldn't find one, so he found me.
Yeah.
And then we're trying to keep from drowning together.
No, I mean, I think the question really, Phil, is that, or the answer is, we met, and I heard Dave's amazing message from freak factor, the idea that could apply, did essentially freak factor for marketing.
Okay. Freak factor for marketing. That is interesting. And Dave, I've heard you speak as well. I read freak factor. I think that's an apt description of kind of what the Pink Goldfish 2.0 is. So why the color pink though? Dave, why did you fall in love with the color pink?
We missed that last part.
Oh, so Dave, why do you love pink, man? Why is pink your color? Giant Freakin' Pink is your Instagram handle. Why pink?
Yeah. So it started just being silly at my talks. I would tell people that I live with all women. I have 3 daughters and a wife, and even the dog's a girl. And so I tell people they're turning me into a woman. So I started with some pink shoes, and that got some attention, and it was fun. It put smiles on people's faces, probably like your unique glasses, right? People like it. They ask you about it. So it just started being silly, and then it turned into pink pants and pink shirts and pink watch bands and pink wedding rings and pink tattoos. And, it's just become now a pink car. So it just became a way to practice what we preach. I think it's unfair when you have people giving advice that they're not living in their life and their business, and we're telling people to be different. So we're going to be different. And I also know that it works. That's why I tell people, because I'm living it every single day. Yesterday, we were driving through the middle of nowhere. And these women were kayaking down the river. They saw the car, and they turned around, came back upstream
like 100 yards. And the first thing they said was, "What's up with the car?"
Yeah. Like how many businesses, how many personal brands are getting that kind of attention, right? Wouldn't it be, this is what I tell people now, wouldn't it be nice if people were coming up to you and demanding that you tell them what you're up to, right? What is your deal? And that's what wearing the pink does. And we used Piggly Wiggly and Pink Goldfish, and they asked him, "Why did you name your grocery store Piggly Wiggly, Clarence Saunders?" And he said, so that people would ask that, right? It gets people's attention. Nobody goes, "Oh, did you ever go to that place called the grocery store?" Like, nobody talks about that. But a place called Piggly Wiggly.
We're sitting in a place called the Inconvenience Store. What was the first question we asked?
Yeah, we're immediately talking about Inconvenience Store. We're going to be talking about this all day. We're going to tell everybody about it. It's the coolest place to have this interview, right? It couldn't have been more perfect. Instead of, "Oh, we stopped at a convenience store." Have you ever been to one? It's convenient. That's not an interesting story. Nobody tells those stories.
I love that. So before we get into too much of the book here, guys.
And it makes people laugh. Look at you. You're having so much fun.
Yeah. So what's inconvenient, do you think, about that store? Have you found something yet, other than the fact now the phone's ringing and it's probably a wall phone?
We asked her, and she said it's because the former owners were rarely here. Sort of like it was, you either found them or you didn't find them. They were either here or they weren't here. It was either open or it wasn't open. So it was kind of like a pop-up store or something like that. You just had to kind of take your chances.
But they said that they're now here pretty much 7 days a week. But it plays into sometimes they don't have what you need, right?
So or
you leave your house and it's inconvenient because you forgot something. And you can come to this place. So I love that they kept it.
There you go. Yeah. Very good. Very good.
Yeah, that's why we're here, right? So very good. Right? Exactly.
They're happy.
What'd you forget?
Coffee. Yeah, I forgot coffee. See?
Nobody get coffee and nobody gets hurt.
Yeah.
I love that, guys.
And
that is perfect for the book. There you go. There you go. So
these girls.
License to sell vodka. Isn't that inconvenient?
See, that is inconvenient. Yes. No alcohol.
Well, we have beer and wine.
Right.
There's a garbage. Just go watch that.
Party is breaking out.
Perfectly inconvenient. Yeah. So guys. 400 examples in the book. You just mentioned Piggly Wiggly, but how did you decide? Like, what is F.L.A.W.S.O.M.E? Like, that's the big premise of your book here. You want F.L.A.W.S.O.M.E company. So talk us through that, and then how you decided what that really meant.
So I'll start at it. The entire premise of the book is the idea that your flaws are the things that make you awesome. Either the things that you inherently are, and you try to do more of those things, or you can be F.L.A.W.S.O.M.E by purposefully doing less of what everyone else considers as normal. So F.L.A.W.S.O.M.E is not only the main concept, but it's the 8 different ways that you can do this.
So you said we had 400 examples, so we needed some kind of structure, we needed some kind of framework. And as we started looking at them, we started putting them into categories. So the F.L.A.W.S.O.M E categories are flaunting, which means to parade without shame. Lopsiding, which is doing more of what everyone else, the conventional wisdom says you should do less of. Antagonizing is deliberately making people upset instead of trying to satisfy all your customers. The customer's always right. Withholding, like Stan just said, is doing less of what everyone else says you should do more of. So again, benchmarks, best practices says you have to have more locations, you have to have more hours, you have to have more products. Withholding says, wait a second, what if you did less? What if you had less of those things? Swerving is doing little things to turn. I think it's hard for people to, they see some of these examples, they're like, wow, that's really big. I don't
it's hard to lopside, it's hard to withhold.
Yeah, so swerving is just taking small steps. Because the next one is opposing, doing the exact opposite of what other people are doing. And again, not what unsuccessful people are doing. It's not like look at the failures and do the opposite. It's like look at the successes and do the opposite. Look at your biggest competitor and do the opposite. M is micro-weirding. That's doing little different things to just get people's attention, to be unusual. And then a new one for Pink Goldfish 2.0 is exposing, which is being willing to admit and be transparent about and deliberately communicate what your company's weaknesses are instead of trying to hide them, instead of trying to fix them.
Being authentic.
Yeah, I dig that. So the exposing does seem to be the hardest one, I would think, for many organizations, right? To actually embrace, oh yeah, this is what makes me weird. So how do we get started on that one? How do we get started exposing without being inauthentic? Stan, let's start with you, man.
So I think it's we talk about a process that we call the 6A process, but it starts with assessing who we are. And then once we make that assessment, the next step is that you have to accept it. Like you have to appreciate who you are and be unapologetic about it. So we're here in Montana today. A little later today, Phil, we're going to be in Utah. And one of the examples we share in exposing is a place called Snowbird, which is this amazing ski resort in Utah. And they did an entire campaign using their one-star reviews. And so, Dave, share a couple of these. These are classic.
So they don't explain it. They don't try to argue with the people. They don't try to tell you their side of the story. They literally just post
verbatim
1 star with 4 empty stars. And then they post the person's review, and then they just have this beautiful picture of Snowbird. So one says powder too deep. One says no easy runs. I felt like I was taking my life into my hands. One says too advanced. And so the message obviously is, if you think about it, if it's too advanced, then it's too advanced for you. But maybe it's not too advanced for someone who is advanced, or at least believes they are advanced.
Yeah, or why do people want to ski?
Yeah, they want that thrill. They want to take their life in their hands. Some people would look at something that says powder too deep and say that's not even physically possible. I'll mount a periscope on the helmet if I have to. There's no such thing as powder too deep. So what they recognize is they're not going to make everybody happy, and everybody kind of says that they know that, but are you willing to antagonize,
push some people away,
in order to attract other people? And the only way to do that is to expose it, is to acknowledge that it's true, acknowledge that it's reality, and be willing to share it instead of trying to hide it, instead of trying to fix it. And again, once you're exposing it, you're probably flaunting it, because that's what you're doing. You're putting out there, you're not apologizing, you're not, but you could expose it like Domino's did and then go, our pizza was bad and now we're fixing it. That's not what Snowbird did. They didn't say, oh, people are unhappy and now we're fixing it. They said, people are unhappy and those people shouldn't come to Snowbird, but you're probably better than those people, so you should come to Snowbird because the powder's really deep, it's super advanced, there are no easy runs, and I bet you're that kind of skier.
It also creates kind of a badge, like I'm badass, or I think I'm badass, I'm going to go to Snowbird.
Right, yeah, and that's the thing. You don't just need the badasses. You get also the people who are like, oh, yeah, that's me, and they break their leg, but they paid, and they got their ski ticket,
they
got their lift ticket. So it's aspirational as well. You're creating something where somebody says, I think I'm tough enough to handle that. And now you're getting people to want to come there. You're making it attractive that way.
Yeah, I think that's the whole idea behind like CrossFit and you know the Tough Mudder, right? Is you got to be tough in order to do this. And well, I'm not very tough, but I want to be, so therefore I'm going to aspire to that brand, which
Right.
is
Absolutely.
that's really interesting. I
We,
like what you. Oh, go ahead, Sam.
I was gonna say, Phil, we talk about both CrossFit and Planet Fitness because they're at opposite sides of the equation. So Planet Fitness is not afraid to actually antagonize people that are super fit and make noises when they work out. They're not welcome, right? They'll kick them out.
Yeah, no lunkheads. Yep.
Yeah.
Whereas you know, CrossFit would look at Planet Fitness and they call it Planet Fitless. Times harder than your entire workout of extremes. And this is, we said opposing before, you know, the opposite, we say in the book, the opposite of a good thing is also a good thing.
And I think that's crucial because I think some people say, well, I don't know, we don't want to be weird, or we don't want to be tough, or we're not advanced. They like misunderstand the snowbird. You could do the opposite of snowbird. You could say, you know, you could post people's reviews, too easy, not enough powder. I never even had to try that hard. Not challenging at all. And you could put that on yours because you're not for those kind of
Right.
people. You're the family place. You're the new skier place. You're the, right? So we're not saying you have to be badass like CrossFit or you have to take it easy and be almost for everyone like Planet Fitness. You can do either one and it's fine. You can say our company's pretty boring. I don't think we're ready for Pink Goldfish. What we say in Pink Goldfish is if you're boring, actually play it up. Be a little more boring. You're like, man, we are the most boring accountants. We are not interesting. On the weekends, we look at spreadsheets. That's how I want my accountant to be. We don't have lives. We don't take vacations. We love tax code. Don't think this isn't this. This is about being weird in what we're not telling you to try to be something you're not. This is about taking what you are and being proud of it and not trying to change it. So this isn't like, oh, well, we're not ready to wrap our vehicle pink. If you drive a black vehicle or a white vehicle, that's fine. You know, if you wear khakis every day, that's fine. If you're boring and responsible and whatever, those are all strengths as well in different kinds of situations. Play that card, be who you are,
Right.
Don't be ashamed of that.
One of our, speaking of boring, one of our favorite examples comes from North Carolina. There's a place called Republic Wireless. It's very basic cell phone service. And they do an entire campaign. They're like, people call us boring like it's an insult. Like they're owning it. Like they're reliable, they're low cost, and that's what you get.
So they show that upside, right? So the key of this whole thing is for every weakness, there's a strength. For every downside, there's an upside. For every negative, there's a positive. So like you call it boring, we call it predictable. You call it boring, we call it reliable. People call you boring, we call you responsible. People call you stingy, we call you fiscally responsible.
Right.
They get it, and that's alignment. That's a good example of alignment. They know there are people out there who want bare bones, and cost is all they care about, and they're willing to suffer any kind of indignity in the process.
Right.
I mean, calling it cell phone service is even a little bit of an exaggeration. You know what I mean? I don't know if it actually is. You may occasionally get a text out. You may occasionally get a text
More
out.
like Wi-Fi phone service.
Yeah.
That's fun. That's fun. I love the idea of owning your weaknesses and owning that, right? I mean, that's super important. I mean, that, you know, I think about my glasses, right? That's why I wear glasses, because I don't want to, you know, I could hide. I could probably put some contacts in, though I don't like to touch my eye, but certainly I own the fact that I'm vision impaired, right? So I think that's super important to do that. So, you know, F.L.A.W.S.O.M.e's 8 different qualities. Do you think, does every business have all of them, or do some have just 1 or 2, or how's this work, guys?
So one of the new things we talk about in the book, this, by the way, is the 2018, and we shouldn't even call it. It's like
0.7.
way better. Partly because we had a lot of time to work on it over the pandemic. But what we found, Phil, is that it's not about just having one strategy. What we found the best companies do actually stack and what we call augment. they use multiple strategies and not just rely on one.
Yeah, so I mean, given an easy example is when you're withholding something like Chick-fil-A being closed on Sunday. When you withhold that, we're not open that day. We don't have those hours. You're withholding. You're doing less or whatever else says more. Be more convenient. Be more available. Be more open. They're like, we're not. So when you withhold like that, you're antagonizing, right? And when you antagonize and people get upset, you have to decide, are we going to expose it? Are we going to acknowledge that? Are we going to be honest about it? And are we going to flaunt it, right? And so that's 4 of them right there. When you're withholding, it's probably going to antagonize somebody. That's an opportunity. And, you know, Chick-fil-A, when you're driving down the highway and there's a sign that says Chick-fil-A, you know, like on those blue highway signs, it says Chick-fil-A, closed Sundays. Like, that's their advertisement. It's not like great chicken or whatever. It's Chick-fil-A, closed Sundays. So they expose it. They're unashamed of it. They're unapologetic about it, even to the point that they had the Super Bowl in Atlanta at the stadium there, at the Mercedes-Benz
Where they're a
Superdome,
sponsor.
where they're a sponsor. And it's Atlanta, which is the headquarters of Chick-fil-A. They have the Super Bowl, but it was on a Sunday. They didn't open up their Chick-fil-A store at the stadium.
Yeah.
So that other people dictate to you how you're going to run your company, and that's guide how you're going to run your business. You can find people who are in alignment with that. You can stack these characteristics, and you can beat the competition, or at least carve out a space for yourself. And that's, I mean, that's part of what we need to argue, is that you don't even need to beat your competition. Maybe nobody is your competition. I think that's part of the point, is to not have competition. Not have competition by doing something that's unique enough that nobody sees anybody else as a comparable substitute for what you're doing.
Yeah.
I dig that. So carving out our own space sometimes, though, is tough, right? Because we're like, oh, well, I'm not really sure. So is there, you know, Stan, you talked about the 6A process. Can you step us through that a little bit more and go through that so folks can really get their arms around the Pink Goldfish, please?
Yeah, so I mentioned before, so 6 A's, and it all starts with what we call assess. So we want to look at our strengths, look at our weaknesses, and then see how our strengths and weaknesses, so we've got a great assessment in the book. We see how those strengths and weaknesses are connected, and that allows us to have the knowledge and insight of what makes us unique and different. The second step, and it sounds simple. Yeah.
So a simple example, Phil, is let's say you do the assessment. You're like, we're kind of small. You know, it's tough for us to fight against those big
we've
competitors.
Got to project bigger.
Maybe we need to be bigger. We need to get bigger. We need to seem bigger. We need to act like we're bigger. We need to project bigness. But the upside of that is that you're responsive and quick. You're flexible. You can move quickly. You're adaptive, right?
Right.
And your competitor, so here's the reverse, and we talk about this in the tech. Your competitor, they're so big, and you're worried about that. They got economies of scale, and they've got size, and they've got all these things. But the downside of that is those people are going to be slower, not so flexible. You can't turn a big ship as fast as you can turn a small ship. So what the assessment does is it goes to that exact point. This isn't, again, about like making up weaknesses and strengths or making up weirdness. It's about identifying those things that you already have. So you're small, but that's great because you're fast. Your competitor's big, and that's terrifying, but they're slow. How do you use your speed to beat their slowness?
Right.
Now you've got a strategy. You can attack now using that strategy.
Jumping ahead on the A's.
Yeah, sorry.
So assess, and then again, the second one, it sounds simple, but it's what we call accept. You actually have to appreciate and own the things that make you unique. The third step is what we call align. Take them through align.
Yeah, so align is recognizing that you need to find people who get it right. Republic Wireless needs cheap people who don't care about high quality service, who only care about cost, right? Walmart needs people who are very similar, but Target needs people who care about style, who care about design, who care about the feel of the store and are willing to pay a little bit more for it. So your weirdness has to align, has to connect with some kind of customer weirdness, and they have to know they're making that trade-off between that strength and weakness versus your competitor. And then the next one is amplify. This is turning up the volume. So this isn't just, okay, this is what we are. It's actually turning up the volume and doing even more of that. So for example, you're small. What if you start telling customers, look, it's me and Stan. You'll have our cell phone. We'll never send you to a junior executive. Here's my personal phone number. I will always answer the phone, or I will always call you back. You're never going to be in an automated phone tree.
Right?
This is really small. There's nobody else here. There's nothing else to this. It's me and Stan in a Honda Pilot. We don't have an office. We're in our basement. And that's going to be really attractive to people who are tired of dealing with big agencies and big groups and getting somebody's third level down person who's been through some 1 week training course in the concept.
Right.
And that's not what some people want. So that's what Mini did when they came to America. They're like, they didn't say, no, it's called the Mini, but it's bigger than you'd think. They're like, it's smaller than you can imagine. That's Amplify. Once you're comfortable with it, once you accept it and appreciate it, once you found that alignment, now it's time to turn up the volume. So like Marmite.
Right.
Marmite is this brewer's yeast, this waste product from brewing. And it tastes terrible, but some people love it. Other people hate it. Well, they had to decide what to do. They want to sell more. But they're like, what do we do? Do we try to convince people to like it?
Or weaken the taste?
Yeah, or do we tone it down to draw more of those people in? And instead they made an extra strength version. So they made it even nastier, even stronger, even grosser. Well, who liked it? The people who already loved it, right? They had that alignment. They knew what was wrong with it. They made it worse, and they drew those people in even stronger. And they also repelled those other people even more strongly. So that's what we're talking about, turn up the volume. I mean, I didn't start with pink tattoos, right? It was pink shoes. But once I saw it working, and once I saw that alignment, once I saw that it connected with people, then I started turning up the volume. That's one of the acceleration processes.
And this is important. Sometimes people get wrapped up that it's, oh, we have to do more. We have to, triple and double and triple down. Well, Amplify is also about a minimization strategy.
Yeah, when people say you don't do enough, you're like, we're about to do less.
Right.
And they're like, you need to do more. You're like, we're about to do even less than you can possibly imagine.
And here's the simple truth as we finish Amplify is that if you try to please everyone, if you try to be great at everything, you end up pleasing no one, and you end up being mediocre at most things. So what we say in Amplify, and this is with Align, figure out what your customers value the most and what you're uniquely positioned with, right, in terms of your uniqueness, and do way more of those things. But at the same time, figure out what they don't value, what everyone else does just because it's considered normal, and maybe turn it all the way down to zero.
And that's where the weakness comes in, because when you're not doing certain things, when you're not pleasing certain people, when you're not offering certain services or products or hours or locations, people are going to say you should. That's wrong. How come you're not well-balanced and well-rounded? How come you don't have that? How come you're not full service? How come you're not here for everyone? And that's going to look bad. It's going to look wrong. And that takes you all the way back to the beginning of it's not wrong. You can't be for everybody. And you keep moving through that process.
So Amplify is number 4. And then we've talked about Augment, which is the idea of stacking strategies, right? Doing multiple F.L.A.W.S.O.M.E strategies. And then lastly, and you talked about it a little bit before, is the idea of attack. So understanding that your weakness has a corresponding strength, but your competitor's strength also has a corresponding weakness. You can go after them based on that insight.
Instead of thinking, okay, they're big, we have to be bigger, they're strong, we have to be stronger, they're fast, we have to be faster, they're innovative, we have to be more innovative. You can actually do things. They're innovative, we're going to keep our stuff the same. And it's going to be classic, and it's going to be vintage, and it's going to be consistent, and it's going to be nostalgic, and it's going to be, and we're going to position them as unreliable and unusual and weird and unpredictable. And so you see how that works. Whereas normally, this is the whole theme of the book. You end up homogenous when you look at the winner. You think you need to be like the winner, so everybody tries to be like the winner, and you just all end up the same. And then you lose, and you wonder, why does nobody want what we're doing? I guess we're not perfect enough. I guess we're not good enough. I guess we're not like them enough. And the cycle just keeps going. Instead of saying maybe we're playing the wrong game, maybe this isn't what we should be doing.
Awesome. Great tips, guys. I got a bunch more questions here, but we've got one quick interlude here for my friends at Vidyard. So folks, hey, we all know that email isn't dead, but wow, sure sometimes can be boring. And if you want to jazz it up, you want to make it F.L.A.W.S.O.M.E, take some time and do some video email. Use Vidyard to record, send sales videos, to connect with your prospects, move your open opportunities along, and close more deals. How does it work? 3 quick ways. 1, put a face to your video. Put a face to your name with that video. Hold up your whiteboard, record your face. your screen, or both for those first touch prospecting videos. Second, if you've got a sales team, share your team's videos and use the outreach tools you use every day to create a sales library full of videos. Put the best together and curate those playlists for each opportunity. Third, keep track of which opportunities are engaging with your videos so you can follow up at the exact right time. Review the stats that tell you who's watching and how long. Integrate this view data into your CRM to see how video drives pipeline development for you and your team. So what are you waiting for? Sign up for Vidyard at vidyard.com/philgerb. Now, here, I hate codes. So do our friends at Vidyard. So just go to vidyard.com, sign up completely free. That's vidyard.com/philgerb, actually, and use it free. And as a bonus, get the high conversion virtual sales playbook. Grow your sales pipeline and watch your business soar, and use some of these Pink Goldfish ideas in your videos. So, hey guys, so I got it here. I know you guys are doing some videos. So tell me a little bit about the videos you guys are doing while you're on the road to kind of catalog the Pink Goldfish that you spot along the way.
Yeah, so one of the neat things is you mentioned the book is based on over 400 examples. So we probably have maybe 100 in the book, maybe 100. So what we've done, Phil, is this is now our 12th state we've driven to. We're stopping along the way, and what's neat is we're visiting a lot of the companies that we featured within the book. So a lot of fun. Tell them about Magic Castle last week.
I mean, the best one so far is Magic Castle Hotel. We feature them because it's just this small hotel, but they're one of the top ranked hotels on TripAdvisor in the Los Angeles area, up against the Four Seasons and the Ritz-Carlton. And it's because they have things like the popsicle hotline, where when you're at the pool, you pick up this red phone. You're like, I want a grape and I want a purple and an orange, and they bring them out with a white for free, and they don't charge you for it. And so we talking for a while, taking some pictures, ended up having a really amazing time and learning more about it. And this is super cool because, like you said, this started with the Freak Factor. The guy's business is called Service Freak International.
Service Freak Hospitality. It's on this title.
And he's the chief executive freak. So, like, there's totally alignment here.
Right.
So he totally got it. He was pumped that he was in the book. And we had an amazing experience, learning more about, it'll go in the next version of the book, 3.0, all the stuff we learned from talking to him.
And they're a great example because not only do they do the popsicle hotline, which is super cool. You just pick up this red phone and they literally bring out on a silver tray with white gloves your popsicles poolside, right? When's the last time you've been to a hotel and you complain because you didn't get a popsicle, right? But they also don't have mini bars in the rooms, right? So you can't order your $7 Diet Coke, Phil. I know you're a Pepsi guy, but what they do is you walk down to the front desk and they will give you a soda, and they have a list of like 20 snacks, and they will give you your snacks for free.
No charge.
No charge.
And they have an ice cream machine and a bunch of other stuff.
Oh,
do your laundry,
your laundry
for you.
Yeah. Wrap it up with a little twine, a little lavender inside.
So that's the key, and that's micro-weirding, is that people talk about those kinds of things. Nobody talks about how nicely their bed was made, or how clean the bathroom was, or how the company actually had their reservation when they showed up, or how the air conditioner worked. Those are expectations. And even when those expectations aren't met, even when it's not perfect, you're going to talk about those peak moments, right? Those popsicles. Oh my gosh, they did your laundry instead of, no, we don't have laundry. We're sending you to some kind of terrible basement where you have to have quarters, and you're down there and it's loud and horrifying and bad things happen to your clothing and maybe to you. And so it's just unusual. And I think that's one of the things he said is you have to give people a story to tell.
Right.
You have to give people a story to tell. And a lot of companies, they're trying to do everything right, but there's no story there. Even when they succeed, there's no story. Nobody cares. Nobody posts a acceptable review. And it's really hard to get people's attention by doing things right. Sooner or later, you have to do something unusual.
Right.
Excellent. So it's not enough to be, as Jay Bear would say, right, the same. We have to be different, right? We have to, same as lame. Jay says that all the time, right? So how do we, you talked about our assessment here. We have that. You talked about some 1-star reviews, how we can look at those, maybe look at those 5-star reviews and turn that up. But how do we get buy-in in an organization to turn stuff down to zero? Because that seems, I don't know, maybe that seems a little risky. Dave, you got any suggestions there, man?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's experiments. That's part of the reason we talked about swerving. So one of the guys there's this guy named Stephen Knight up in Canada, and he saw me speak on Pink Goldfish, and he brought the book back and he gave it to, that's kind of fun. Look, is this the front cover or the back cover? Hard to tell, Phil, because they're kind of the same. All right, so he goes back to work, and instead of going, hey, here's what we're going to do, he got a copy of the book for everybody. They started reading it through one chapter a week, started having discussions about it. And I think that's what's persuasive is his examples. It isn't Stan and I believe, or Stan and I did some research, or Stan and I have some statistics. Real companies having real success, and hey, here's how they succeeded. Here's what the numbers look like. Here's the quantifiable success that they're having. So, for example, Chick-fil-A, they're closed on Sundays. That's 1/7. They're open 1/7 less, 14% less than any other fast food outlet. But they make more per store than McDonald's, Starbucks, and Subway combined. So that's results, right? So when you bring those results, so I think it's sharing that information, that reality, those truths with people. Let the example sit, because you could not like an example, but it's still an example. It's still true. Whether you like it or not, it's happening. And so then it's trying things on a small scale. So like there's a company called HVLS, High Velocity Low Speed Fans. And that was a terrible name. And but they're business to business, and who cares? And it's technical, and we're selling to technical people. But people would always call them up and be like, what's the name? And they're like, HVLS fans, how can we help you? And they're like, I don't know if you can, but are you the people with those big ass fans? And so they didn't change their name to Big Ass Fans immediately, but they sent out a postcard with an advertisement selling some big ass fans, and it went crazy. And then they put up a sign on the side of their building with a huge donkey, and it said Big Ass Fans, and they got a bunch of trouble about that. But they also got a lot of positive response to that. And they eventually changed their name and became a very successful company because that's exactly, and when people see it, they think it's hilarious. And now people are talking about your high velocity, low speed fans, but not using those terms. So they gave people a story to tell because it's interesting, it's antagonizing. They've been banned, like from the Lexington airport. They can't sponsor like kids' little league teams because people think it's offensive.
Right.
They can't even give away, they try to give away their fans, and some people wouldn't take them because they don't want big ass in their location. But they didn't do it all at once. They started small. They were responding to customers. They were responding to reception. They decided, let's try this out. And so that's our suggestion, is just try it out. I didn't wrap my car on the first day. I didn't get a pink tattoo on the first day. I got some pink glasses. You didn't have 20 different colored pairs of glasses when you first started out. You probably got them once, and even that. Before that, you were thinking, should I go contacts? Should I go LASIK? Should I try to not look? Should I try to fit? Instead, you decided to, put a cool package on it, put a cool wrapping on it. And so I think that's all we're encouraging, is just try it, learn about it, share it, give people a time to buy in, but also just try little experiments and see what works and what doesn't.
That's great advice. I love that suggestion. That's a great way to get started. So folks, if you're listening, take the time to really dive into Pink Goldfish, like really understand it, share it, read the examples, and see, is there something you can do to start small? Yeah, there we go. Yeah,
dive into the goldfish tank.
You like that? You like that? So yeah, so you like that? That going to the fishbowl. So I'm trying
here,
alignment.
Guys. That's good alignment.
Right. I'm doing my best, guys. So cool. So guys, if we want to get more of your F.L.A.W.S.O.M.E, obviously we go to the Pink Goldfish 2.0 on Amazon. But where would you send them, Stan? We'll start with you, and then I'll turn it back to you there, Dave, for the last words here.
Sure. So if you want to find more about me, stanphelps.com. stanphelps.com. Follow me on LinkedIn. That's where I do primarily all of my writing. Every day I write under a hashtag called the1299.
Cool. And Mr. Rendell,
yeah,
where do they get
Giant Freakin' Pink on Instagram, Giant Freakin' Pink. Find me on LinkedIn as well. My website is drendall.com, so DRENDALL.com. pinkgoldfishbook.com will link you to the new book and some information about it. But drandall.com is where you can find me. stanphelps.com is where you can find him. But we're both on LinkedIn. That's a great way to find both of us. I'm on Facebook, but I think I'm out of space right now. I got to clear out some deadbeat friends and make some room.
I'll leave later today. So
no, you're not the deadbeat. You're the good
good guy.
You're the good kind.
You're sweet. So cool.
Got to stick together.
There you go. Yeah. So us freaks got to stick together for sure. So pinkgoldfishbook.com to get to know these two amazing guys. Expose your F.L.A.W.S.O.M.E, right? Get to know it, stack it up. Think about the 6 A's that they gave us today. And then to get started, share your truths, right? Let the examples in the book speak for themselves and try things on a small scale. Get a copy of Pink Goldfish 2.0 at pinkgoldfishbook.com. Get to know Stan and Dave. I'm grateful they're my friends, and I'm grateful they share so much F.L.A.W.S.O.M.E stuff. Thanks, guys. I really appreciate it. Have a great rest of your trip.
Thanks for having us, Phil. Take care.
Take care, guys.